let's address the elephant in the room. Alabama's sitting there, and it was Alabama more so than it was South Carolina and Ole Miss. Alabama's sitting there and guilt-tripping, high-grounding, talking from the top of the hill, sitting from their skyscraper, screaming down on the common folk, saying that they should be in the postseason. We got gypped by the committee. We're getting screwed. How about strength of schedule? Why do we even schedule big games?
Right.
All of that, throw it out the window. Goodbye. Goodbye. I don't need to listen to this. I don't need to listen to that crap. You guys are a bunch of phonies, and you cannot lose to a 7-5 Michigan after talking all of that garbage. And you want to talk about, you don't know if they're motivated or not. That's fair. Fine. Alabama probably is more talented than Michigan. But the point is, you had a chance to prove something, and you didn't. So what good does all that complaining do when you have an opportunity in a relatively big game with a lot of bragging rights on the line for those who care, and you're sitting out there and you're going to drop a dud like that?
Yep.
Yeah, an immediate 2-score down, and Jalen Milroe, as god-awful as you could possibly imagine. They had a chance towards the end, and then a terrible 4th and 10 attempt at the end. I don't want to hear it. Alabama, you didn't get in. Nobody cares now. If you guys are so motivated, same thing with Florida State last year. If you guys wanted to get in so bad, then go out and give a look at me, prove it to the committee in your bowl game. Florida State did do that. Jury's still out on South Carolina. And Alabama didn't do that. So I am over that. Wipe your hands clean. Goodbye, Alabama. No interest, no care in the world. You cannot lose that game and say you should have gotten in the playoff. That's my takeaway on that.
Well, now, the conversations for SEC people in Alabama, the game didn't mean anything. Those kids weren't up. I actually had a friend who roots for an SEC team who is a huge SEC guy reach out to me, Colin, and say, well, the Alabama kids were boozing at the bar. I have, quote unquote, a friend working at the hotel bar the night before. Save that for another person who cares. You've dropped the ball and you look like idiots. Let's call it for what it is. You look like idiots. And another thing, I think that Michigan team significantly got better towards the end of the year. They got a big win versus Ohio State to end the year, and then the end of the year of the win versus Alabama, who was playing all their starters and looked like they wanted to win that game at the end of the game. I think you could give your flowers a little bit to the Michigan Wolverines. But, Colin, with Nick Saban out of the SEC, you wonder if truly the SEC, you had Saban, you had Smart. This is such a coach's sport. You talk all the time on this is a coach's sport, and I agree with you. But with Saban out of the picture in the SEC now, I think it opens the door for the Big Tens. It opens the door. I know the ACC has struggled, but other Power 5 conferences to kind of inch back that ground a little bit. And it's a Big Ten day here in ESPN West Palm. C-Cat's got his garb on. I know you can't see him on the camera yet. And I got my garb on too. It feels good to be a Big Ten fan today. I got to say, Kyle. I got to say.
Listen, I went to a Big Ten school. I couldn't care less that Michigan beat Alabama.
Well, you hate Wisconsin.
Hold on. I don't think it adds any sort of the race between the Big Ten and the SEC because there is not a race between the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yes, there is. There is this year.
There's not. No,
this year there is. The
not.
Top-heavy Big Ten teams are better than the top-heavy SEC teams.
Fine.
Maybe as a conference.
Fine. The national champions, there's been 5 different SEC national champions.
A lot of it has been Saban. He's not there anymore.
LSU, Georgia.
19, that's 6 years ago.
Fine. It's just been Michigan, Mike. What are we talking about?
Hey, it's a new era. It's a dawn of a new era, Colin.
I can't listen to this too much. You don't watch these games in which, whether it's true or not that these teams care or don't care, you could chalk it up however you want. That's fine. I don't think that my conclusion coming out of those games is, I have a little bit of there's a little bit of a head start in the Big Ten versus SEC race. There is not a race between the SEC and the Big Ten. That is not the way I look at it. I look at it just of Alabama, the team this year, specifically the ones whose fan base, the teams themselves, same with Miami, sitting there and complaining. Lane Kiffin, we'll see what happens there. For those guys to sit there and belittle the committee and belittle the other team, the little team in the college football playoff realm who have made an effort to get in. SMU, they didn't lose a game in conference until the championship game. And Indiana, who beat everybody on their schedule until the best team on their schedule came out in Ohio State. Those teams did what they were supposed to do. They get in. And all of a sudden, now we're supposed to belittle those guys, and then you guys go out in your bowl game and lay an egg? I can't deal with that. This is the type of situation where I can no longer take you seriously, because if it was that important to you and if it was that important to prove a point, then you would have came out there and you would have throttled whoever was in front of you. You didn't do that. So for me, this is not a grand scale Big Ten.
You're not
SEC
making it Big
thing.
Ten. You're not putting on your Wisconsin garb today. I was hoping he had some Wisconsin on today.
No, Wisconsin is not bowl eligible. But so that is not that for me. USC playing with all of their freshmen against Texas A&M versus a lot of their freshmen. That doesn't do a lot for me. What I need to see now is Lane Kiffins of the world and the Alabama people of the world and the Miami people of the world to shut up and watch the rest of the playoff and not scream into the clouds about how they were left out when they should have been the odd man in at 3 losses.
Right.
I'm done listening to that. That is my conclusion. Goodbye. Good riddance. Nobody cares anymore. That's just my take.
Yeah, and Kyle, we got plenty to look forward to, and still a couple SEC teams in this thing. Texas is right there. You got Georgia right in there too. So, like I said, the top-heavy teams in the SEC this year, the Georgias and the Texases of the world, they still have a chance to prove the spectrum wrong about the SEC this year. I'm a little sad that we're getting Ohio State and Oregon now. I'd much rather have seen that maybe in the next round. But this comes to the conversations of the committee and how maybe they need to change things entering next year.
Yeah, we'll see. We got the first game on tonight, Boise State, Penn State. A game in which I think a lot is riding on the pride of Boise State. And, last time they were in the Fiesta Bowl was that great game against Oklahoma, I think back in 2007, I believe. So that was they have a little bit of mojo with the Heisman, the snub, whether you want to call Genty. Genty actually has the Barry Sanders record that he could break with 140-something yards. So there's going to be something at stake tonight on that end. But if there's one thing to Penn State's credit, is that there is a team that is very good at beating who they should beat. The Green Bay Packers of college football. It is the Penn State Nittany Lions. That is a team that is very good when they out-talent the team that they are playing. They are very good at beating that team. I don't know if I see Boise State walking in and competing immediately, but if there is going to be a chip on your shoulder moment, I think if there's a team that should have it, I think it's probably Boise State.
Yeah, and I think you got to be able to run the ball. That's the number one thing I'm looking at. You have the Heisman, in my opinion, should have been the Heisman Trophy winner, but runner-up Genty, and you mentioned the Barry Sanders record. We know what Boise's going to want to do. Are they going to be able to do it when the X's and O's line up against Penn State and the better team? So if you can't run the ball, forget about it. They're not going to be able to throw, and this is going to be an absolute rout. But the last time we saw John T. and Boise State play a team of substance, in my opinion, was Oregon, and he ran all over that defense. Now, I think Penn State probably has a better defense than Oregon. We could split hairs about that later. But they've proved that they could do it against a Power 5 top team in the country. So you got to establish a run.
They've proved it once.
You got
it once, and it was 3 months ago.
You got to establish a run. If Boise doesn't establish a run, you might as well turn this thing off by halftime.
Yeah. And the one thing that people love psyching themselves, I'm a victim of it as well. People love psyching themselves up into these games and then realize about halfway through each game that the disparity in college football is much larger than people want to give it credit for. Hopefully you don't see that tonight or tonight and tomorrow, because you got a couple good matchups that are probably a little early, like you alluded to. So you're hoping that you're going to get a couple good games on this early slate. But for the Arizona States and the Boise's of the world, I think that you hope that they could hang around. That is the goal. If you're looking at the previews of this and you're looking at the coaches and the people covering the games, they're thinking you got to hang around.
Yep.
It's not just we got to win, we got to beat them, we got to do this to win. No, it's we got to do this to hang around. That is
correct.
The key.
And
so we'll see.
Also, what Drew Aller are we going to get? Are we going to get the Aller